This is Cheryl Manley from Sharing Love of Paper. I'm so glad you could join me for another card making class today. Today we'll continue our look at cutaway cards by making gap cards. Gap cards are cut so there is a gap in the middle of the card front, which is then bridged in some way to hold the card together. I'll demonstrate two different ways of bridging this gap, one with die cuts and one with acetate. I'll be using papers from the Homemade Sweetness Designer Series paper from my demo cards. At the end of the video, I'll show a couple more examples, one of which uses paper from a different paper set. For this first card, I'll be using a couple of dies from the Wanted to Say die set. Unfortunately, it is no longer available from Stampin' Up! You can use another sentiment die as long as it is at least 1.5 inches tall across most of the width of the sentiment, or you could simply use a die-cut shape, perhaps an oval or rectangle, that is the right size and stamp your sentiment on that. Here are the rest of my materials for this card. For my card base, I'm starting with a piece of cardstock that is 5.5 by 8.5. Then I have a 4 by 6 piece of the patterned paper. This is what it looks like on the back. There's a 4.25 by 5.5 inch piece of Misty Moonlight cardstock and a 6-inch piece of ribbon. I'll set these aside and get the set I've already started on. I'll just move some of these pieces so I can start with my card base. I'll start by scoring it in half at 4.25. And then I'll crease it well with my bone folder. Next, I'll just cut the card front at 1.5 inches from the score line and set the card base aside. From the remaining piece, I'll cut it again at 1.5 to create a piece that is 1.5 by 5.5. This will be part of the card base. This leftover piece will be used later to create the sentiment. Next, I'll cut my Misty Moonlight cardstock. With the cardstock in portrait position, I cut it at 1.25 inches, twice. This gives me two pieces that are 1.25 by 5.5. I'll set this piece aside with the white piece for creating the sentiment. Now I'll simply trim these pieces to 5.25, making two pieces that are 1.25 by 5.25. I'll set these with the card base. Now for my patterned paper. With the paper in landscape position, I'll cut 1 inch off. This piece will be for the inside of my card. I'll rotate this remaining piece to portrait position and cut at 1 inch twice. This makes two pieces that are 1 by 5. Next up is the sentiment. I'm using the happy birthday words in shadow from the die set and those cardstock pieces I set aside for the sentiment. I already die cut the shadow from the blue and the words from the white, but I want to show you that there wasn't enough room to cut both words from the white in one go. So I simply moved the die so that happy was fully on the piece by one edge and I die cut that. Then I moved the die so the word birthday was fully on the remaining piece and die cut that to give me both words from that white piece. Now I'm ready to put this card together. Bringing in all the pieces I put with the card base, I'll start by gluing the patterned paper strips to the blue cardstock strips. Then I'll glue these to the card base, one to the 1.5 piece of card front that's still attached, and the other to the additional 1.5 piece that was cut for the card base. Now I glue the white words to the blue mat. I'm just adding little bits of glue because I don't want glue all over the place. Now, with the card base in landscape position and the attached card front strip at the top, I'm going to lay the detached piece at the bottom and align it carefully. Then I'll center the sentiment in place over the gap so that you can see how it will look. Now I'll glue it in place, adding glue only to a narrow part at the top and bottom of the sentiment. I need to use the glue sparingly so it doesn't make a big mess. Before the glue dries, I'll make sure the previous detached piece is still aligned with the bottom of the card, the sentiment is centered, and no glue has transferred to the inside of the card. Off camera, after my card was finished, I realized it was a bit flimsy where the two words join, so I cut another shadow from thick white cardstock. I just added glue to the front of that white shadow and lined it up on the inside of the card behind this for additional stability, making sure it was aligned perfectly so it wouldn't be seen from the front. That made a big difference. This card is just about finished. I'll grab that 1x4 piece of patterned paper that I set aside and glue it to the inside of the card so it's centered behind the sentiment. Okay, now for card number 2. For this card, I used stamps from a couple of sets. One is from my stash, a set that was given to me and I'm not sure where it came from. I'll be using the stamp that says, "For Someone Sweet." I wish I had the Filled with Sweetness bundle that was designed to go with this paper. I would have a sentiment I like better that says, "You're so sweet," and a great cutting die to cut it out with. Oh well, you use what you have. The other stamp set I'm using is called Made with Sweetness. This makes the small strawberries using a two-step process. You can see that this stamp makes the berries, and this stamps the leaves. I used strawberry slush ink for the berries and granny apple green for their leaves. After stamping them, I found that a couple of the berries were a bit separated from their leaves, so I used a granny apple green Stampin' Blends marker to join the leaves to their berry. Then I fussy cut them, cutting a couple of clusters of 3, and the rest singly. Oh dear, I forgot to use this ribbon on the last card. I'll have to come back and finish that up in a bit. For this card, I also used dies from 2 die sets. The first, Everyday Arches, created the arched shapes I want as a mat for my focal. I used the third die, counting from the smallest. I also used a die from the Stylish Shapes set to cut my sentiment, this smallest of the long banner dies. Okay, here's the rest of what I'm using for this card. This time I'm starting with a card base that is 4 1/4 by 11. I've also got an additional piece of white cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I've got a 4x6 piece of designer series paper. I'll use the red side, but this is what it looks like on the back. I've already die cut a piece of strawberry slush cardstock using the 4th die from the Everyday Arches set, again counting from the smallest die. I have these 2 pieces that I've rough cut from the pattern paper. I'll be fussy cutting those. I also have a 3 1/2 by 4 1/4 piece of acetate to use to bridge the gap for this card. Finally, I have a 15-inch piece of white baker's twine. I'll set these aside and bring in the one I've started. Oh, I just wanted to show you this piece of paper. It's the one I got the strawberry jam pieces from. It's mottled red on the back, and you can see there's a wide variety of jams to choose from. Okay, I'll just pull these out of here so that I can get started on this card. Where's my other jar of jam? Oh, there it is, hiding in the envelope. I've got all these pieces that I've already die cut. I'll start by gluing this white arch to the red one. The red makes a nice mat. I'll set that aside and show you these other pieces. I have 2 more white arch pieces and a banner piece. Using strawberry slush ink, I inked around the edges of these. I also stamped my sentiment on this banner piece in black ink before inking the edges of it. So I've got my acetate piece, my jam pieces, my arched pieces, and my sentiment. I'll go ahead and glue this jam jar onto this piece near the bottom of the arched mat, but I'll leave the other one for now. I'll set aside my patterned paper piece and work on my card base. I want to score it in half at 5.5. I'll set that aside and cut my patterned paper. First, I put it in landscape mode and cut it at 4.25. Now I rotate that and cut at 1.25. This gives me a piece that is 1.25 by 4.25. I cut another one exactly the same size, and I'll set the remainder aside. These two will be for my card front. I'll fold my card front on the score line and crease it well with my bone folder. Next, I'll cut my card front at 1.25 from the score line and set the card base aside. From the remaining piece, I'll again cut at 1.25. This leftover piece is where I cut 2 of my white arch pieces and the sentiment banner piece. This piece I cut off is 1.25 by 4.25 and will be part of my card base. Let me just quickly show you how I die cut this piece. I used the third arch die, counting from the smallest die, and cut 2 arched shapes side by side, leaving room to cut a banner piece. I cut the banner piece using the smallest of the long banners from the Stylish Shapes set. Then I cut my third arched shape using the same die on the remaining 4.25 by 5.5 piece of white cardstock, and used the rest to stamp and fussy cut my strawberries. Okay, let's start assembling this card. I'll line up that bottom strip along the bottom of my card. Then I'll be gluing this piece of acetate to hold the 2 pieces together. I want to make sure the edges are aligned. It looks like there will be about 1/4 inch of overlap. Most of the time, I don't care what adhesive you use to put your card together, but I definitely recommend using Tombo's multi-purpose liquid glue for any pieces that you're gluing directly to the acetate. But use it sparingly so it doesn't make a mess. I managed to get a bit of that glue on my fingers. It happens. You can probably see the glue is visible through the acetate and looks rather messy. That's what these patterned pieces are for, to hide that mess. I'll glue these in place. I want to be sure to line them up carefully so they won't be seen from the inside. I'll glue this second piece in place. Unfortunately, you can see that I didn't get those lined up as well as I usually do. It's a bit tricky when you need to keep your head out of the way of the camera. Now I'll lay out my focal and sentiment on this to see where I want it. I think I want the top edge of the bottom piece of the card to line up at the halfway point of the sentiment and the arched piece just above this. I'll glue the arched focal piece to the card front, keeping glue well away from the edges. Then I'll glue the second red-edged arch to the back of the acetate to hide the glue. Make sure you line it up exactly so it looks good from the front. Finally, I'll add the sentiment with mini Stampin' Dimensionals, only along the bottom so they won't show on the inside. Okay, where's my twine? Here it is. I think before I add that, I'll glue the matted arch to the inside of the card. I want to make sure it's centered so the white part is hidden behind the others like this. I'll hold it in place, then carefully close the card. I'll straighten it a bit, and now it's ready. This is where my message will go. That looks a little plain on the inside, so I'll find the scrap that's the same width as the card and then cut it in half so I can have a piece top and bottom. There, let's see how those pieces look. Do I want to use the shorter piece? No, I like it like this. I'll go ahead and glue it in place. Because there's more space at the bottom than in the top, I think I want to trim this one down a bit. It's about 3/4 inch wide. Let's make it a 1/2 inch. That's better. I'll glue that in place. I'm almost done. On the inside, I'll glue the remaining strawberry jam piece to the arched piece, making sure it will be right side up when the card is opened. I don't want it to look like this. Next, I'll wrap the twine around the top part of the card and tie a bow. When it's wrapped all the way around like this, tying a bow is just like tying your shoe. Easy peasy. I'll make sure the loops are the size I want, then trim the end with my scissors. I think I'll move the bow to the right side of the card. I'll just slide it around until it's where I want it. Now all I need to do is scatter a few strawberries around. I'll take one group of 3 and place them here near the bow, and I'll add the other group of 3 down here. Now to just put a few singles to make a nice scattering of strawberries. I'll add these last 2 inside to finish things off nicely. So that's my second card. Before I move on, I'm going to clean off the bits of glue that I got on the acetate. When glue is on paper or cardstock, I use my glue eraser, but I've found that a microfiber towel works better for getting the glue off acetate. I just keep rubbing it until the glue is removed. There, that's better. Okay, now to go back and finish the first card. Where is that ladybug I fussy cut? Oh, there it is. Let me quickly cut out a few more from the back of the patterned paper. Okay, how do they look? You know, I really don't care for them on this card. I think I'll save them to put on a flower somewhere on another card. Now for the ribbon. Often I would tie a bow, but I don't want to do that here for 2 reasons. First, the ribbon I'm using is a 1/2 inch wide and a bow could get a bit bulky. Second, I want this for a masculine birthday card, and a bow feels a bit feminine sometimes. So I'll simply tie a 1/2 knot in the ribbon. Let's see, I think I'll put it right here. Now I need to trim the ends. I've decided to fishtail them by folding the ribbon in half and then cutting it at an angle from the side to the center fold. I need to trim just a little more. I'll use the scissors to grab a glue dot and poke it in to hold the 1/2 knot in place. Then I'll use another to attach the bow to the card front. Okay, there are my 2 cards. And here are a couple of variations. This one is very similar to the first card. I just used different paper from the discontinued Mediterranean Blooms set. That knot needs to be flatter. I'll just place this magnet on it to hold it down until that glue dot sets. This card is even more similar since I used the same background paper. Here, let me move these out of the way. As you can see, I substituted a honey bottle for the jam jar and used bees instead of strawberries. Both are in this stamp set. Here are the strawberries with their leaves, and there is the bee. I used a marker to color in the yellow parts. So, there are my cards. Let's see some close-ups. I do hope you've enjoyed this video class. You can check the description below for links to some of the materials used in this video and a general link for shopping for Stampin' Up! Products with me as your demonstrator, for those of you in the United States. Each month that you make a purchase with me, as long as you've chosen to be contacted, you'll receive an email of instructions for that month's class cards in PDF form as my gift to you. As always, as an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to have you choose me as demonstrator when you make purchases from Stampin' Up! I would earn a small commission on any purchase you make, but that would not affect your price. And if you click that thumbs up, leave me a comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so, you'll make my day. Have a great one.